I would just say, leaders, don't treat your leadership job as a gatekeeper, treat it as a guide. Can I say that again? Make sure you're not the gatekeeper. When I say gatekeeper, think about that. We're the gatekeeper of all power and authority and budget and everything else. What if I approach it as a guide? Don't think manager, think mentor. I'm guiding you now. And when we do build that connection like that, I think that we're going to get more from them than just duty. We're going to get that second mile, not just the first mile. And that's, of course, what I want for my team.
Welcome to Leadership, the podcast where leadership meets real-world insights. In each episode, you can eavesdrop on exclusive conversations with top thought leaders, best-selling authors, and experts in leadership, communication, relationships, culture, and everything else that shapes your effectiveness in the workplace and in your personal life. Leadership is here for you. Now, here's our host, himself a seasoned coach and best-selling author, Dr. Roger Dean Duncan.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Leadership, the podcast where we unpack leadership insights and tools to help you grow, adapt, and lead with purpose in today's rapidly evolving world. In this episode, we're exploring a future that's already here, with Generation Z at the center of it all. And who better to guide us through this conversation than Dr. Tim Elmore, best-selling author, leadership expert, and founder of Growing Leaders, an Atlanta-based nonprofit organization created to develop emerging leaders. Tim and his team provide public schools, state universities, civic organizations, churches, and corporations with the tools they need to develop young leaders who can impact and transform society. Tim's latest book, titled The Future Begins with Z, dives deep into how Gen Z is shaping our world and how leaders, educators, and influencers can connect with, empower, and lead this dynamic generation. In a time when cultural shifts, workplace expectations, and technological disruption are redefining what leadership looks like, understanding Gen Z isn't just important, it's essential. Whether you're leading a team, a classroom, a boardroom, or a movement, you'll want to hear what Tim has to say about the values, mindset, and future impact of Gen Z. Dr. Tim Elmore, welcome to Leadership.
Oh, gosh, it's great to be with you. I can hardly wait for this conversation we're about to have.
It's going to be fun. Let me start with this. What sets Gen Z apart from Millennials, Gen X, or Boomers?
You know, that's a great question, and I think we get them mixed up sometimes if we're not really deep in our thought about these cohorts, these generational cohorts. So Gen Z is coming in different. In fact, that's why we're having this conversation. So many employers are getting frustrated instead of fascinated with this new batch of young adults entering the workplace who are different than millennials. So one difference is this. Millennials were conditioned as young people to do everything in teams. They played soccer in teams, school projects were in teams, everything was in teams. Gen Z has been forced to learn alone on a screen. We all remember the pandemic when we were all sent home. And so they're much more individualistic. Doesn't make them bad, but they're just much more individualistic. They may need to be taught or instructed to work in collaboration with others and not just be about themselves. Again, not a cut down. By the way, Roger, I have noticed in the data collection I've done, Gen Z does reflect a little bit Gen X. So Gen X grew up in the 70s, where there was a bit of cynicism in the air with the Watergate scandal, the Vietnam War, the OPEC gas crisis. It made us all question authority. Well, Gen Z is questioning authority, and they're coming in a little cynical, more so than the millennials for sure. So I'm hoping that's satisfactory, at least as a broad brushstroke.
Yes. So what do you see as Gen Z's greatest strength?
Well, I think they have eyes on the future like I don't have. So I'll give you a story that I think illustrates what I'm trying to say. Early in the Gen Z book that I just did, I talk about Colin Webb. Colin's a young man that I met in high school a number of years ago, very smart high school student, much like your grandchildren. And Colin graduates and gets an invitation to go to MIT. So he goes to MIT, graduates with honors. And so when he's done, he has several job offers. Well, he decides to go to work for one of the big three in Detroit, General Motors. And they put him in the smart car division. He's a smart young man. Well, this is so typical of the scenario I'm painting right now. Colin begins to look around and sees that GM, while it's a big organization, has some very traditional ways of doing things. So he has ideas on how they can update and upgrade what they're doing. They need to do professional development better, he thinks, or correct this system or update this system. So he takes his ideas to his supervisor, but his supervisor pretty much shuts him down. Yeah. Dies on the vine.
Thanks, but no thanks.
Yeah, that's right. I didn't pay you to come up with these ideas. So he's told to keep his head down, keep his nose to the grindstone. But Roger, get this. Colin says, yes, sir, but he's not done yet. This is so Gen Z. He sends an email to the CEO of GM, Mary Barra. And he says, I got some ideas that could make our company better. Well, what I love about this is Mary replies. And she says, Colin, these are really good ideas. Let me take them to my executive team. And when she takes them to her executive team, they agree. These are really good ideas. But by the time those ideas make their way down the org chart to the middle manager and Colin's supervisor again, they die on the vine. In fact, Colin is told, you got to be around here 8 years before you get to lead anything.
Yeah.
Well, what that does to this young man's head and heart is, I feel like I'm not welcome here. So by the end of the year, Colin leaves GM, unnecessarily, I might add. He has since then started 3 companies. He just sold one of them, and he's now doing quite well. But the point is, when I look at what he's done, I'm thinking this guy has intuition on the future. He's brilliant at AI, much more than I am. He's just smart about smart devices. And I'm thinking GM could have leveraged that instead of lost that had they played their cards well. And again, I have full respect for GM, but I'm just thinking this happens way too often. We lose them when we don't need to lose them.
For sure. Well, clearly previous generations have some blind spots. Let me ask this. What challenges or blind spots do Gen Zs face that leaders need to be aware of?
Well, there are several, and they would even admit them. I did focus groups. I did quantitative and qualitative research on this. But my focus group, they were pretty candid about what they realize they don't know. First of all, many of them come to us from homes that parents said, just focus on academics, just do academics. And they didn't have that job like maybe you and I did back at 15, 16 years old, where they got used to working at a workplace. So they might graduate college and their first career job is their first job maybe.
Right.
So that would be one. So in the book, I talk about the Peter Pan paradox. And I love this metaphor. So I think all your listeners would remember the story of Peter Pan. Disney did that great movie back in 1957 or whatever. So Peter Pan is this winsome character who can fly into London. We don't know how he does that, but he flies into London, sprinkles pixie dust everywhere, and does magical things. It's crazy. The other side of the coin was, if you remember, Peter Pan wanted to live in Neverland, where boys never had to really grow up. Mm-hmm. So here's what I'm seeing in the workplace. The age of authority seems to be going down. They're coming in with magical knowledge and intuition, but the age of maturity seems to be going up. You see that? I've lost count of the number of employers that have said to me, 26 is the new 18. Well, we need them to be ready at 18. So this, here's how I like to say it. There's something magic and tragic going on in culture. And so we, as leaders, are going to have to listen a little bit more than we ever used to listen, but we're going to have to coach a little bit more than we used to coach as they come on board.
And for those who are not only very smart, but also have maturity, the world is their oyster.
No doubt.
They can do anything. The world is ready for that combination.
Yep, I agree.
You describe Gen Z as realists with anxiety.
Yeah.
Can you unpack that for us?
Yeah. So I researched all 5 generations that are in the workplace today, clear back to the builder generation that grew up during the Great Depression, World War II, that might still be, doing some work at 81 or whatever. And then the baby boomers, and then the Gen Xers, and then the millennials. So here's what I noticed. When I talked to Gen Z about the narrative they had as they entered the adult world, here's what they said. I'm coping and hoping. I'm coping and hoping. And what they were saying by that is, I'm hopeful because I'm young. Every young person's hopeful about having an awesome career. But right now they feel like they're just coping with the uncertainties in the world today, with mental health issues like we've never seen before in young people. And anxiety has been normalized in these Gen Zers. So I'm saddened by that. My empathy grew for Gen Z as I met with young adults from New York to California. But the coping and hoping is they're realist because the millennials were idealists. I'm going to change the world by noon on Friday.
Right.
Gen Z wants to change the world, but they're much more pragmatic about it. But they're really wrestling with those anxiety and depression and panic attacks, and that's why mental health needs to be something that employers pay attention to and maybe have some added value to in the workplace. I think we're going to have to deal with that.
Well, the impact of the pandemic will be felt for generations, I think.
Yeah, you're spot on. In fact, many of them said, I feel postponed and penalized. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
So they're not blaming the government. They're not blaming mom and dad or their teachers. They just feel they've been postponed. And I'm saying, I need your creativity, Josh. I need your energy that you bring to the workplace. So let me help you get ready. And that's what I'm hoping to do with this book.
Well, open communication, open conversations, candid conversations, and listening carefully.
Yeah.
All of that is so critical in helping this generation find their way in the world because we need them.
No doubt. No doubt.
Well, a recent Wall Street Journal opinion piece cited research showing that, quote, a mere 2% of Generation Z members hold the values that companies want most in new hires, namely achievement, learning, and an unbridled desire to work.
Yeah.
Let me ask, how does that square with the research you've done?
It's actually aligned perfectly. I have such a great respect for Susie Welch and her former husband, Jack Welch. Great, great leaders. And boy, Susie knows what she's talking about. But here's what I would add to Susie's research. That article, I read it. It was sobering to me. But I think what I've noticed as we hire Gen Zers is I need to profile work and career differently than I did for my career. I entered 45 years ago dutiful. My dad taught me to show up on time, work hard, work until the end of the day, and you keep working if your job didn't get done. I mean, I'm old school.
Yeah.
And that's really, I think, what Susie was saying. With that dutifulness we don't see in Gen Z. But let me unpack that, Roger, just a little bit. Part of their pushback is they looked at what older generations did, and maybe that's the job being the central focus, and they saw many times, not all the time, how it ruined a family. Dad was never there, or dad broke up the family or whatever. So they're pushing back and wanting work-life balance, and that smells to us sometimes like you don't really want to work. I found they do want to work, but their motivation is different. It's devotion, not duty. So when I talked to Gen Zers about career and work, they said, I wish it could feel like my hobby. Now, at first, the hair on the back of my neck bristled. I thought, it's not your hobby, buddy. But here's what I learned as I interacted with them. They're so afraid of getting a job they hate and then getting golden handcuffs where they can't leave because they need the money so bad.
Yeah.
They said, well, let me just step back and talk to your listeners for a minute. Listeners, think about the last time you had a hobby that you just loved. Maybe it was playing tennis or collecting baseball cards, or I remember having a little train set in my basement I could hardly wait to get to after school. I did that hobby because I wanted to, not because I had to. I could hardly wait to get to it. And my best work might be at 9 p.m., not 9 a.m. Well, I want a workforce that feels that way. I'm here because I want to be, not because I have to be. So I have found is if employers can profile the job a little different, don't expect them to be dutiful, perhaps. They will be, but I want devotion from them. So I began to pitch the job. What if this could be a place you use your passions and you leverage your talent and it feels like a hobby? Now, I might have to add, no, I need you here at 8, buddy, because the meeting starts at 8. But I'm telling you, I get them at the heart level then, not just the head level. And that's made all the difference in the world for us.
Well, compared to previous generations, how do Gen Zers view authority and leadership? What are you finding?
Oh, gosh. Okay, I'm going to do my best to answer an hour-long question, Roger, with a 2-minute answer.
Yeah.
That's a huge question. Listeners, if there's no other thing you hear, please hear me say this. Gen Z, by and large, with some exceptions, sees authority differently than we do. And here's how. Our generation might say, well, position gives you the right to influence, right? You're the president, you're the vice president.
Right.
They would say connection gives you the right to influence. Now, while the first one isn't wrong, I say leaders, please hear me, make a connection with them, win them at the heart level, not just make sure they're punctual. Our older generations would say, you should listen to the man at the top. They would say, the top man ought to be listening to us. We would say old people have wisdom. They would say, yeah, old people might be irrelevant. Now, that sounds disrespectful. Remember, these kids grew up with a smartphone, not with a cell phone. So they're asking Google questions we used to ask mom and dad. So they do come in with smarts, but sometimes it masquerades as maturity, and it's not. But I would just say, leaders, don't treat your leadership job as a gatekeeper. Treat it as a guide. Can I say that again? Make sure you're not the gatekeeper. And when I say gatekeeper, think about that. We're the gatekeeper of all power and authority and budget and everything else. What if I approach it as a guide? Don't think manager, think mentor. I'm guiding you now. And when we do build that connection like that, I think that we're going to get more from them than just duty. We're going to get that second mile, not just the first mile. And that's, of course, what I want for my team.
When I think back at some of the great leaders and coaches that I had early in my life, and those who said, do something because I said so, were much less effective than those who said, do it this way and let me explain why.
Yes.
And in my work, I frequently refer to the importance of connecting with people's heads, hearts, and hopes. And I believe that's what you're talking about.
It really is. You just described timeless leadership that worked back in our day. It's working maybe the only difference would be some of us could get by with tougher, less connected leadership. But today, Gen Z is demanding it. If I can be blunt with you, they're not putting up with some of the BS that older generations put up with.
Sure.
They'll walk away like Colin did. And sometimes I'm thinking we need to make sure that we don't. So can I give you a great quote, Roger, that I think you're going to smile at?
I'm already smiling.
Okay, good. I love it. Teresa, my friend, said to me, Tim, Generation Z is the sandpaper on my leadership I did not know I needed. Isn't that awesome?
Yeah.
They're sandpaper. They're making us better leaders.
If we will let them.
Yes, absolutely. That's right. You're right.
So what communication styles seem to resonate most with Gen Z? Tell us a little more about that.
Yeah. Well, one of the complaints I hear from employers is they come in way less professional than they should. They might wear flip-flops to work and shorts, 3 tattoos, a nose ring, and that's just off-putting to some people that are part of my generation. But may I say, they're sharing something with you, right or wrong, they're sharing something with you. So I think they're saying, hey, let's keep it real, okay, keep it real. So something Charles Duhigg taught us some years ago in his book, Super Communicators, really pays off with Gen Z. He said leaders need to recognize there's 3 different kinds of communication or conversation happening in the workplace. Practical conversations, social conversations, and emotional conversations. And we're not going to do well as leaders if we don't recognize what's in front of me. So practical conversations are usually what happened back in the day. It's facts, it's information, no emotion necessary. We're sharing information. It's very practical. Social conversations are maybe a team member wants to share with us what happened last weekend. It's just a social conversation. We don't need to correct the data that they shared. It doesn't matter that it was 9 p.m., not 8 p.m. Social conversation. Just enjoy it with them. But Roger, a lot of them are coming in with emotions and maybe emotional health issues, challenges. Mm-hmm. And when they're emotional, a practical response is not helpful. I'll tell you a quick story on this that I learned as a dad. I have 2 adult children. They're both in their...
That's the best training ground, by the way.
Boy, is it. Parenting is the ultimate leadership. So my daughter is a counselor, and she's a very good one. And she and I were in the car not long ago, and she was saying to me, Dad, if you were to go see a counselor about a parenting issue, would you prefer to see a counselor that was a parent or one that had really done good training but wasn't yet a parent? Well, Roger, I thought we were having a practical conversation. So I said, well, all things being equal, I'd go see a counselor who was actually a parent that actually had real life experience. She was quiet. I didn't realize we were having an emotional conversation. She's seeing parents, and she wasn't a parent, still isn't.
Right.
When we got home, she said, I'll be inside. She ran inside. By the time I parked the car and walked inside, I could not find her. When I walked upstairs to the room she was in, I noticed she was crying. And I suddenly realized I thought it was a practical conversation. This was a daughter saying to her father, would you see me, Dad? Would you see me if you were asking a question? And I suddenly realized, oh my gosh, wrong answer. In fact, a friend of mine later told me, the answer is, I would see you, honey. That's what I would do.
Yeah.
But see, this is me being a practical guy when I should have recognized, I don't need to share facts right now. I need to believe in this person in front of me. And I think that's what we need to remember as dads, granddads, and bosses to this next gen.
Well, that goes to the idea of how important it is to be a good listener. And listening is not just waiting your turn to talk.
Yeah.
Listening is really focusing on the other person in every sense of the word.
It really is.
So what role does mentorship play in the development of Gen Zs?
I believe it's huge. My research shows me that it's absolutely essential if you can offer it. Now, some of you might have so many direct reports, you would say, I don't even know if I can do this. But if you have a manageable size and you treat yourself not as a manager, but a mentor, not as a gatekeeper, but a guide, I think you win them over. So Roger, let me share an acronym that I use almost daily when I am approaching a Gen Zer, and I notice that they need correction. Maybe they need a little firm feedback, and maybe they're a little fragile even.
Your change initiative has the budget. The strategy looks solid, and everyone's nodding along in the meetings. But for some reason, it's going nowhere. Dr. Roger Dean Duncan knows why. After 40 years in the trenches with top business leaders, he knows that change fails when organizations lack the right foundations: trust, accountability, and real communication. Dr. Duncan's free 10-minute assessment shows you exactly where your organization stands. Answer a few straightforward questions that reveal your true change readiness level. Don't waste months discovering the hard way. Get your free assessment today at leadershop.net/change. Again, that's leadershop.net/change.
So you know how forever and ever and ever we've said the term, you don't have a leg to stand on, or this is the leg you got to stand on.
Right.
So I took the letters ALEG, and they outlined 4 steps I need to follow if I'm going to have to offer, have a hard conversation as a mentor. The letter A reminds me, start with asking, not telling. I want to tell them they've done something wrong, but what I need to do is say, tell me what was your thought process behind that decision you made? You see, when I ask questions of someone, they feel valued. A 22-year-old feels valued when a 65-year-old is saying, tell me what you were thinking. I wonder.
Yeah.
The letter L, like you just hinted at, listen. When I listen well, they feel heard. And by the way, that's the number one item that my research tells me they want when they start a job. I want to have a voice from day one. The letter E is empathize. This is a learned skill I've had to pick up in the last couple of years as an older male. I need to find ways to say, I had no idea. I get it now. Or, I bet that made you feel awful when that happened. Mm-hmm. When I empathize, they feel understood. Now check this out. Ask, they feel valued. Listen, they feel heard. Empathize, they feel understood. Now I've earned my right to do what I wanted to do from the beginning, which is to guide them. but I earned it through a bridge I built, not a badge I wear. That's, I think, a key to winning them over.
I can see using that acronym in instances where you're not concerned about somebody's performance. In fact, they did something outstanding, but you begin with ask and you say, tell me a little bit about your thought process behind this decision you made that led to this wonderful outcome.
Yeah.
So it's not just about correcting someone, it's about connecting with someone.
Yes, you're right. Absolutely. I think you just nailed it right there. And maybe that's the shift we have to make if we're kind of old school, perhaps. I need to make a connection. I need to build a bridge. In fact, I need to connect before I correct. So you're right on. That's good.
Well, we need to catch people doing right. Most of us, I would hope, understand this principle. When you tell somebody they did something well, nice job on that presentation, that's not good enough. You need to tell them, what was it about the presentation that worked?
Yes.
That's when it becomes helpful and more meaningful.
No doubt. Very specific affirmation is key. You're right.
So how should organizations rethink workplace culture to attract and retain Gen Z talent?
Okay. Wow. That's another hour-long question that I'll try to do in 2 minutes. When I asked Gen Zers about their ideal workplace, some of what they said might feel unrealistic, but the more we can do what they said, the longer we're going to retain them, and we need to retain them. By the way, right now in the workplace, it's generally a buyer's market, not a seller's market in most industries. Now, we know what that means in real estate, right? If it's a buyer's market, that means, I could probably offer less than they're asking for this house and still get the deal. If it's a seller's market, I might have to pay more than the asking price. There are fewer young adults entering the marketplace, the workplace, than the millennials were. So, in fact, Roger, check this out. Within the next 5 to 10 years, there will be more 65-year-olds than 16-year-olds. That's never happened in America before, to my knowledge.
The birth rate is shrinking.
Yes, it is. So that means, think about it, leaders and employers and hiring managers. We may have fewer candidates coming in. We better be good, and we better look for the best and the brightest and work to keep them. So anytime we can include fun in the work, that doesn't mean we're not getting the work done, but if we can make it playful and fun, like that hobby feel, we're going to win them over. The more we can build relationships and make ourselves accessible. Gen Z said, I would like check-ins daily. Now, a lot of employers would say, are you kidding me? I can't check in with you daily. Maybe not, but as close to daily as possible. That, again, wins them over. They want to make sure there's that relationship there. By the way, one thing they're looking for, professional development. They don't want to feel stuck in their growth on the job. In fact, that's one reason they leave is they feel like they just were stuck and they check out after a year and a half. So continue to grow them, pour into them, invest in them. That's huge. I'll stop there, but these are the kinds of environments that will make them stick around and not check out.
And it's very expensive to hire new people.
Yes, it is. No doubt about it. Yeah.
Up to 150% of an individual's salary is required to replace them.
You're right. Absolutely. In fact, if you don't mind, I'll volley back on that. I share an analogy in the book that has been so helpful for me when I think about this and the hiring costs and the retention costs. I share a story about a woman. I don't even know her name, but she wandered into a a thrift shop in New Hampshire back in 2017. She was looking for an old picture frame to restore. So she wanders around and she finds this old frame, and she thought, I don't know if I can restore this, but it only costs $4. I'll go ahead and get it. So she buys the old picture frame. She takes it home. When she's around family and friends at the house, she shows them the frame. They all agree the frame's nice enough, but one of them says, but the picture inside that frame, I think that might be from a famous painter. And sure enough, she took it to an art museum, and it was an N.C. Wyeth painting that she later sold for $191,000.
Pretty good return on investment.
Pretty good ROI. That's right. Now, here's the analogy. She bought the frame, but it was what was inside that frame that was valuable. She didn't pay much, but it became very, we're not spending much on these Gen Zers. Usually it's low salary. They're 22 years old. But if we'll treat them like currency, not commodities, invest in them, I'm telling you, we might find that was worth way more than I spent if I can keep them around and not have to hire another one in 6 months.
How can leaders create environments where Gen Z people feel welcome and psychologically safe? What does that kind of culture look like?
Yeah. Well, I offer another acronym. I'm trying to offer really practical handles in this book, Roger. So I use the word perks. We all know I like perks. We all like perks on the job. But perks starts with the job interview. There's certain things I think employers ought to find out early on rather than a year later. So the letter P reminds me, even though I'm about to share with them my preferences for them, I should ask them, what are your preferences on the job? Meaning, what do you wish were true as you start this job? They might share some things that you can easily do, like a Coke machine in the dining room, whatever. But preferences, what I wish were true, good to find out. The letter E, expectations. These are stronger than preferences. What do I expect to be true? What do I assume is true? Roger, I learned this long time ago. Conflict expands based on the distance between expectations and reality. If I tell my wife I'm going to be home at 7:30 for dinner and I get home at 7:40, it's not a big deal. If I show up at 9:30, we're going to have a hard conversation.
Yeah.
And it's not because she can't stay alive without me for 2.5 hours, because I created an expectation. Find out expectations. What I found is if we don't, they're around the job, they get hired, they're around the job, and they're causing division in a department with gossip and rumors. And it's because we didn't find out something that they were expecting that didn't happen soon enough. Okay, the letter R, requirements. Many Gen Zers are coming in with demands or requirements. I want us to be marching for this cause as a company every year. And you might say, glad I found that out at the job interview. That's not going to happen here, Bob or Josh or Austin or whatever. Right. So that's key. The letter K in perks. I think at the job interview, we should find out the keys to their heart. Now, they need to find out the keys to our heart, which is our core values for the company. But if I find out the keys to our heart, they love dogs, or they love the Chicago Cubs, or whatever, I'm telling you, now I got conversation stuff in the hallway with them that are beyond the job. I'm showing I care about them 6 months later because I know they love dogs or the Chicago Cubs. And then, of course, the last letter, S, talk about salary. Even though you post that salary on the website, sometimes I'm finding it's not clear in the job interview. And Roger, you're not going to believe this, but I just read the latest data. 4 out of 5 Gen Zers are now bringing their parents with them to the job interview. I'm not kidding. Mama wants to sit in there and negotiate compensation. And I'm not blaming the Gen Zer. I'm saying, Mama, what are you doing? What are you doing, sweetie?
Yeah. I can hear the helicopter blades.
Oh, you can hear the blades moving. Yeah. You can hear the blades moving. Yeah, it's so true. It's so true.
So what kind of feedback do Gen Z people respond to best? We've kind of touched on this. Let's dig down a little bit.
Yeah, sure. So I love that acronym ALEG. Ask first, then listen, then empathize, then guide. That means I'm making a connection before I make a correction. But let me offer a warning here. I really believe in Gen Z, but sometimes they're so young, they can misstep. just like we misstepped back in our day and still do for that matter. So we've all heard the term psychological safety. Thanks to Amy Edmondson years ago.
Yeah, we just talked with her.
Oh, did you? Oh my gosh. I love that leader. So Amy taught us about the power of psychological safety. Roger, here's what I'm finding. Some members of Generation Z have weaponized that term, not fully understanding what it means. Now, we know what it means. It means this is a safe place to push back and offer feedback both ways, boss to team member and team member to boss. What they're saying is when we offer harsh feedback, they feel like it's not psychologically safe. And the manager might say, no. This is just good feedback. You need this to get better, and I need you to get better. So we're going to have to be careful sometimes that very often this younger generation, not all the time, but often, they've been conditioned through their school and college experience to be fragile, not agile.
Right.
And what we need them to be is agile, because this is a day of rapid change. So I would say build that connection. Make sure you assure them, I'm beginning with belief. I do believe in you. But because I believe in you, I'm going to challenge you. I'm going to call it out of you. I'm going to expect a lot of you. So that would be the one broad brushstroke I'd offer. Make sure you begin with belief, clarify what psychological safety really is, and then earn the right to give that tough feedback.
Well, I've found over the years that it's really critical in these kind of relationships to establish and agree on expectations, mutual expectations up front, not later, but up front.
Yep.
And then when somebody's performance varies from that agreed upon standard, you refer back to that original conversation. It's not like it's a surprise to them.
That's right. Yep. No, you're exactly right. I'm glad you brought that up.
And then you coach them on, okay, how can we close the gap between what we agreed on and what we're now getting? And then it feels, I think, a lot safer.
Yeah, that's so good. You're going back to hopefully something you wrote down too. It's a paper trail that you can call that out. So real quick, here's something that I learned the hard way. We had different departments at Growing Leaders that were beginning to hire people. I wasn't involved, and we began to make some wrong hires. Not bad people, just wrong hires. And Roger, there was one day I had to stand in front of the entire team and say this: many of you have demanded that we be inclusive here. And I want you to know that's what we are. That's what we're working to. I want you to feel included. I want you to feel you have a voice. I want you to feel like you can be yourself. We want to be inclusive here. However, I said, we are not only inclusive, we are exclusive. Meaning we're not for everybody. This is a mission that I want you to breathe and live by and love. And if that's not who you are, come and see me. I hope you find another job. But I think it's important for us, especially in the day we live in, be inclusive. If somebody joins the team, you help them belong, but be unashamedly committed to your core values and be exclusive. If they're not fitting into those or belonging to those core values, maybe it's time to make a change. And I think we need to be unafraid to make those changes if we need to make them.
Well, it's important to be clear not only about what you stand for, but about what you don't stand for. A lot of organizations are pretty good about articulating their values, but they don't talk about behaviors that are at variance with those values. I mean, just ask the people at Enron.
Yeah.
They had a wonderful mission statement, but they strayed from it.
Yes, they did. No doubt about it.
So, Tim, what should educators and institutions be doing differently to prepare Gen Z for the real world of real work?
If I were to boil it down to one term, I would say this: due to the rapidly expanding reality of AI, which is replacing some entry-level jobs, et cetera, the largest virtue and skill set we can build in Generation Z is emotional intelligence, which entails self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, and relationship management. Most of us know that. But I'm telling you, in a world where Gen Z may have spent a good deal of their life on a screen where they didn't develop these interpersonal skills, this emotional intelligence, because of AI expanding, we need EI to expand, emotional intelligence. In fact, I'll tell you what I told my kids as they were growing up. I told my kids, success in school is basically 75% IQ, 25% EQ. You get out in the real world, it's just the opposite. It's 75% EQ, 25% IQ. Get good with people. So if we can build interpersonal skills in Gen Z, oh my gosh, we will have a very valuable, always employable team member. So that's what I would go after. Yeah.
Makes a world of sense. So what industries or career paths is Gen Z gravitating toward, and why?
Well, technology, certainly. They're very intuitive about smart technology. Many of them want to be an influencer on social media. And by the way, 1 out of 8 Gen Zers has monetized social media.
Yeah, it's amazing.
It is. And 20% of those who have, it's a full-time job. It's 6 digits as they sit on a couch with a phone and a bag of Cheetos, and they're making more money than I might be making right now.
Yeah.
So it's crazy. It's a different world. But here's what I would say. Not only is technology high on their list, but one thing is troublesome because social media is no longer just about connection. It's about performance. People are performing on social media now to get likes, shares, and views.
Right.
So many are wanting to go into the entertainment industry, like a disproportionate amount. And I'm saying, oh gosh, I know that sounds lovely and so forth, but that's a limited world, buddy. That's a limited world right now. Let's build some skill sets that the world desperately needs. I don't know we need a bunch of entertainers right now. By the way, I'll be honest, I think we need plumbers, electricians, some of those hard skills that are not white or blue collar skills. They're no collar skills. Maybe we need to begin to look at the needs of the world around us and say, all right, how can we build a skill set around the talent of this Gen Zer to meet that need?
If I have an electrical or plumbing problem in my house, I don't call somebody who's good on TikTok. I mean,
That's
I
right.
know where to get help.
That's right. That's exactly right. I love it.
Yeah. So how do you see Gen Z shaping the future of entrepreneurship?
Well, it might be important for listeners to know 72% of public high school students want to be an entrepreneur. 7 out of 10, which means they look out at the current workplace and they're kind of inside saying, I think I'd rather start something than join something. So they might see current workplaces as a little bit irrelevant and too traditional, maybe. But I think if we can set up, if we're part of an established company, an entrepreneurial zone, it could feel like a startup even though we have an established organization. So what I recommend is an internal gig economy. So let's say you got this established organization in an established industry, but maybe you've got a team of Gen Zers and maybe a few Millennials and Gen Xers just to make sure they don't go off the rails. But it's a very creative team of entrepreneurs. And you give them 1 or 2 problems that your company needs to solve in the next 12 months. And then you set aside budget for the untold fruits of their labor during that time. But they're brainstorming and they're entrepreneurs, and it feels like we're in a startup. But yet you're not scared about money because you're not in a startup, you're an established organization. This will help keep those Gen Zers. In fact, it's the best of both worlds. So I would say try that idea, kind of an internal gig economy that might just keep them around.
All of this is fascinating to me. And more business schools, by the way, as you likely know, are allowing students to major in entrepreneurship.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's a thing now.
It's an exciting world.
Which is what so if you don't mind me adding something, Roger, as much as you can, leaders listening, manage by objective if you can. Now, we have typically been a very prescriptive group of adults managing the young, right? Mamas prescribe everything to their children. Don't forget your backpack. Don't forget the quiz on Friday. Don't forget grandma's birthday next Tuesday. But when we do that, we mean well, but we're creating an external locus of control. They're looking to mom for the answers, not inside. So Coaches are prescriptive. Mamas are prescriptive. Bosses, employers are, here's what you need to do to reach the numbers. If you can manage by objective and in a sense say to that young team member, now here's the goal I want you to reach. You need to reach this goal, but I'm going to let you reach it however you want to reach it. If you can do that, they're going to own their job, not just rent their job. And of course, that's what we want. So that would be huge.
Well, Tim, if you could give one piece of advice to a Gen Z listener right now, what would it be?
To a Gen Z listener, wow. I would say, as you work to be timely in your skill set, meaning I'm keeping up with the times and I'm staying relevant to smart technology and AI, don't lose the timeless. We need to be timely and timeless. And Roger, you and I would both agree, I think I know you just a little bit, there's some timeless virtues we dare not leave behind that our grandparents taught us back in the day. Honesty and ethic, integrity.
And their grandparents taught them.
That's exactly right. So, Gen Z listeners, timeless doesn't mean antiquated. Timeless means it's always going to be evergreen. So I would say that. We teach leadership with images, and one of our images is the iceberg. We show a big picture of an iceberg where you can see the whole thing. And we say this iceberg represents your leadership. The 10% above the waterline represents your skills. You can see them. But the 90% that lies beneath the surface represents your character. And it's always what's beneath the surface that sinks the ship. Very few of us get derailed permanently with a skill problem. We can get derailed if we haven't built a step below the surface. So that's time. I would say, Gen Z, pay attention to listen to Grandpa. Listen to Grandpa right now and borrow those skills and virtues. Dare I say virtues, and add them to those skills you have on AI. I think you're going to be employable.
I think it's so important for the generations to work together.
Yeah.
And to learn from each other.
Yeah.
And some of the organizations where I've worked where there are multiple generations, I've seen it work both ways. I've seen the generations sort of wall each other off, and I've seen the generations integrate and learn from each other.
Yeah.
And it's joyful, frankly, when you see that. And it's so much more productive and fun, frankly. And I'm from the school of thought that you should have fun in your work.
Yes, I agree. I love what you just said, by the way, and that's the key to the future, I believe, where mentoring goes both ways, young and old. In fact,
exactly,
it's called reverse mentoring. And I recommend this homework assignment to listeners. Find somebody from a completely different generation from you. If you're a little bit old, let's say 45 or older, find a young person. If you're young, find an old person. Sit down together, and step number 1, swap stories. You'll always find something in common when you swap stories.
For sure.
But then, take turns sharing your superpowers. The old can impart something to the young, for sure. But then, check your ego and your logo at the door and say, what can I learn from this 23-year-old? I do this all the time, and I'm always learning, and it's brilliant. So I agree. Reverse mentoring is the key to the future.
Well, thank you so much, Tim, for joining us on Leadership. If the future truly belongs with Z, then what we've just heard should both challenge and inspire us. Generation Z isn't just the next wave. They are a cultural current reshaping the way we lead, work, and relate. Tim Elmore reminds us that leadership isn't about controlling outcomes, it's about cultivating people. And as Gen Z steps into their power, the most forward-thinking leaders will be those who listen, learn, and lead with intention. If you're leading Gen Z or you are Gen Z, the time is now. The tools are here, and the future, it's not coming, it's already begun. If you found this episode valuable, please share it with your team, your network, or anyone else who's ready to lead with more heart and more impact. And be sure to leave a review. Even a single sentence fuels the algorithms that promote the great content that Leadership offers. And for free resources to help you in your leadership journey, go to leadership.net. That's leadership.net. Thanks again for joining us. Until next time, stay safe, be happy, and spread good cheer wherever you go. For Leadership, I'm Roger Dean Duncan.